Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another installment of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today I have with us Dave Schmidt. Dave, would you just mind sharing with us a story of your personal Ground Zero moment and really how that shaped you into who you are today and really kind of what you learned along the way?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron. So, a quick story about me. When I was about 21 years old, maybe 20, 21 years old, so this is about 5 years ago, I was working on tugboats going up and down the East Coast, going away for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, coming home for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, learning about, hey, I'm making some real money now. How can I make more money? When I'm home and I have 2 weeks off from work, how can I make more money? So I started researching real estate, and then I started to talk with my dad, who was a doctor. And hey, how did you invest? And so he was showing me how he had been investing, the more traditional route. And I just kept looking at the returns and looking at what the stock market had done and what 2008 had done for him. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is really like these returns suck compared to what I'm looking at in real estate, even at a passive level in real estate. So my ground zero moment was like, man, this is the most common way people invest on the planet is through somebody, maybe not a stockbroker, but a wealth manager who takes, some type of percentage fee, and you give them, your hard-earned money, and they quote unquote invest it for you or find a great return for you. But the annualized return after fees is like 5%. And I'm like, man, this is just horrible. And so I started, working with him to educate him and myself at the same time, like, how can we take this? It was not a gigantic amount of money, but it's like, how can we take this and turn it into something epic that provides returns for the rest of our lives? Not just, hey, when you're done working, the money's not going to keep working for you, so to speak. So that was my ground zero moment. I'm like, man, I got to learn everything about real estate. I literally started binging YouTube videos. I chose flipping houses. That seemed like an easier segue for me, something I could figure out the fastest. I think that's really why I chose this. I could get into it the fastest. It was the most readily available. I understood some construction. I knew people in construction and real estate locally. So that's how I settled on that. And from there, I mean, we've just kind of built this company the last 4 years that now we flip a bunch of houses and we lend money to other flippers just like ourselves. And now, now we're using all the money, and now we're going and getting investor money. So we've just kind of like snowballed into this giant thing. But it started with looking at the returns and kind of rejecting the mainstream, I would say, or Main Street, as I should say.
Yeah, 100%. I like what you just said there a lot because I mean, especially for me, and I feel like a lot of other people our age right about now are kind of taking a look at things kind of similar to that way. And they're just saying, is this it? Like, is this really what the rest of my life looks like? Is it really me working 9 to 5 until I'm 75 and Social Security is going to disappear? Like, is this really what I'm supposed to, is this how I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life? And that's where, like me, I know that everybody pretty much mainstream looks into stocks. Like everybody likes to invest in stocks, but at the same time, like I was just never really into stocks. Like I've seen where people can have wild success, and I've seen where people can create one terrible horror story based on those. And that's just a little volatile for me. I really never, I don't want to play to lose per se, but that's where I also started my kind of journey into real estate. And a lot of what I think I get confused on now is like the biggest probably barrier, at least to me, is going to be financially. Like a lot of us don't have, like, especially if you're still in school or anything like that, like you don't have the financial means unless you have a seriously wealthy family member or something that's willing to go in with you to get into the space. So I guess my question is kind of what would you tell to the college student that is either still in school or about to come out of school, get their first big job? What would you kind of tell to that person that wants to explore like getting into real estate investing?
So I think the biggest thing for me is um, in the beginning when I started, uh, my father wasn't like, here's my retirement account. It didn't work like that at all. It was like, I'm not sure. I've never done this before. So when I first started, I actually had to prove to him that this stuff worked. So, and granted, I wasn't making much money in my day job. I didn't have hordes of cash. So what I figured out is I figured out if I can find a way to find it, like just an amazing deal, a deal, too good for anybody to pass up. And I don't want to say fake it till I make it, but I invested in myself where it's just literally like 10, 12 hours a day. All I would do is research stuff. And I almost created my own curriculum for myself, learning. And I did have a mentor teaching me a bunch of things as well, but it's like I created my own college course, so to speak. And I think the biggest thing for a young person is they have this idea that they need a lot of money. And money helps, but really what is powerful is going to somebody with money and saying, hey, I know how to do this. I know how to find the deal. This is a really great deal. This is why it's a great deal. You don't have to tell them how you found the deal, but when you become an expert, even if you don't have the money, I mean, you have the time, you have probably the most powerful thing in the world, the internet. When you become an expert, there's something so powerful about it. And I didn't always believe in myself in the beginning, but the first house that I ever bought, I made over $50,000 on. I didn't put a dollar of my own money into it. None of my family money was invested into this deal. It was other people that I could attract from around me. Some of them I had only known for a couple months, and I was able to convince them to give me the money. The reason I was able to convince them to give me the money is because I knew what I was talking about. I knew what I was doing, and I could prove it. You know what I mean? I wasn't just full of crap. I could prove to them that I knew what I was doing. And I think the bigger message here is invest in yourself, self-educate, avoid the noise. There's a lot of gurus out there, avoid the noise. Find somebody who knows what the hell they're doing and model it. And we talked about this before the show. Model what they're doing. If it's working in another market, do it in your market. And I did that. I modeled what somebody else was doing, and then I had to evolve because obviously no two markets are the same. But start there and kind of work, figure out what's working, what's not working in the way of advertising and doing deals and all that kind of stuff. And you have to evolve, but work off of somebody else. And to find that mentor, just like to find the money, the mentor might have the money, they might not, but to find that mentor, you have to prove to them that you're driven, you're ambitious, and that you're going to learn. Nobody's going to have to check up on you and say, hey, did you read that? You're going to be coming back to them and saying, hey, hey, John, I wanted to talk to you about this method, this lease back method or something crazy that I just read about, and I'm so interested and I want to learn more. And when you have that type of personality, I guarantee you'll be successful, especially when you're ambitious and you want to learn. And I'm still like that today with so many other things, economics, banking, insurance. I never want to stop learning. And I think to anybody that'll mentor you or loan you money, when you show that, they know that you're committed to the project and you're not going to screw them over.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really, really important things that you mentioned there. And I would say probably the starting one is really that it starts with you, and you have to be driven, and you have to decide that like you are making the conscious decision to learn what that skill is, to learn that skill, to learn about the industry, to learn what you need to know to become a quote unquote expert. And another thing that you touched on that I think is really powerful is that when you spend that time, and yeah, you have to pay your dues, but when you spend that time to truly become that expert level person, there's a certain level of confidence that comes with it. And I think a lot of us kind of in like college age or maybe just outside of college have kind of dabbled in a lot of different things where they might say like, yeah, I have some sales and skills. I have some skills in social media. I have some, I have some different skills in different things, but you don't have that overwhelming sense of confidence in anything because really you haven't gone all in on one thing. And that's where I think what you mentioned is really, really important, because when you do take that deep dive into kind of whatever specific thing you choose and you feel like you've reached that expert level of, information, then that's where you really have that newfound kind of sense of confidence where you can say like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. Give me your money because it's going to help you. Like that's where you become a lot more marketable to somebody, especially in real estate, where you can tell someone that like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to find you an all-star deal and we're both going to make a lot of money off of this. And there's not too many people that can say, well, I don't know at that point. Like, especially once you have done it more than once as well, where you have that track record that you can show someone, like, look, this works. Yeah, I got it from somebody else. Yeah, I'm modeling somebody else's success, but I'm modeling their success. I'm not modeling what they did wrong. I'm modeling what they did right.
Exactly. And to just to add on to that, in this world that we live in, that's typically what you would be offering some type of investor if they were going to lend you money in a deal, giving them a guaranteed return. That's hard to find. And if you can bring deals to the table, that's so powerful. I mean, you see it in commercial real estate, residential real estate, basically in any business. The person that has the deals and the leads is the person that's the most successful. And that takes like hard work. It takes a lot of figuring out. So if you're out there finding the deals, there's going to be people that are going to lend you the money. They're going to back you. They're going to work with you. So maybe I harp on this too much, but having the deals or having the leads, whatever business you're in, that's the most important thing. If you don't have that, you have nothing. If you're selling a product and nobody knows about your product, it doesn't matter how great it is. If you're buying houses, but you don't have any houses to buy, well, it doesn't matter how good you are at running the numbers. If you can't find any houses to buy, you're dead in the water. So figure out what your business needs, like what the fuel is for your business, and focus on that. I'm not like the most handy guy in the world, but we have a house buying business. And my main goal is to negotiate great deals and find great deals. And I'm good at doing that. And that's really the bulk of what I do. In the private lending business, my job is to find great borrowers and basically connect them with our investor base. And our investor base isn't out there finding great borrowers every day because they're hard to find. They're not a dime a dozen. So that's what I would kind of throw on to that last part of what I was saying, is just make sure that you understand what the real value target is in your business and focus on that. Like, don't get inundated with the kind of some of the BS. If you find great deals, or you have great leads, or you're really good at marketing and you can sell your product, that's what an investor, whether it's an angel investor or just a private investor that wants to fund your deals, or even a bank, that's what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that we talked about before officially hitting record today, that I think is a really great opportunity for some people in a similar position to us right now, is that if you have a higher understanding than a lot of people in your market, whereas like if you have a higher understanding of what to look for in a deal, or what specific thing, like how to find that good deal for an investor base or something like that, there's a huge opportunity for you right now to take the information from where you're learning it, the highly complex, highly sophisticated information, and convert that into something that is more easily understandable to those below you. I think there's a really great opportunity that for you to then take your I guess you could say superpower of understanding that more complex scenario and then teaching it to someone below you. I know that you've talked a lot today about how, what it takes to find a good deal. What it takes to find good borrowers. Like a great example for that would be you then take the highly sophisticated information that you find from podcasts, from mentors and things like that, and then you convert it into your story and you convert it into what you learned. And then you turn that into an opportunity for yourself, not only to better your understanding, but also to teach somebody else. And you kind of hand them that blueprint so that you've paved the way. Now they just have to put in the work and do it themselves.
Yeah. So I think everything is changing, especially after COVID. People aren't working in offices, and I feel like there's so much. We're always competing for people's attention. Okay, everybody in every business, we're always competing for people's attention. And I think aside from really big brands, I think the biggest thing moving forward that is going to propel most businesses the best is providing value to the customer. And then so Russell Brunson talks about this. I'm a big Russell Brunson guy, but basically working backwards of who is your dream client, dream customer, what are they looking for? And then like I spoke before the show, if they're searching for a certain piece of information or a certain method, and you're learning this stuff all the time, and maybe it's a very complex maybe it's a very complex subject, and you're able to, we don't want to use dumb down because I'm not saying people are stupid, but get on the same level as somebody. Or maybe your dream client learns different than you. So maybe you learn at a high level and you understand things, and that's your sector. Maybe you're trying to educate investors that are going to invest in your business about a complex concept that they've never heard about. So this idea of taking ideas and discussions and even entire books and basically paraphrasing them or putting them into your own words. I'm not saying copy them. I'm saying repurpose content, because there's so many people in this country. I think the last census 330 million, something like that. Depending on the size of your business, you may only have 1,000 followers. They may not know about the people that you follow and the people that teach you. They may not want to spend the time. They may want to spend their time looking at your Instagram or your LinkedIn or your Facebook or your YouTube channel. So take the content that you're learning, repackage it into something that's a little bit more digestible. The example I use with you is somebody that talks about very complex economic data that can really make your head spin if you don't understand it. Me taking that data and eventually creating my own podcast where it's like not necessarily economics for dummies, but something that you can listen to while you're driving a car without like getting in an accident. And I think whoever, if your listeners, whoever your listeners are and what your listener base is like, if they're looking to get into business and they do this and they educate and they become an expert and they educate and they know what their clients are looking to do and how they actually learn, I think they'll be extremely successful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think kind of bouncing off of that, I think a lot of people are kind of afraid to take the chance at doing that because they get this like imposter syndrome. They're afraid of feeling like a fraud. They feel like they're stealing somebody else's information. But like we've mentioned a couple different times on here already, is that you're not stealing that information. Like you're not literally like ripping the label off of their book, putting your name on it, and then putting it back to market. Like it's not like that. You're taking what you learned and you're putting it in your own words and you're incorporating your own story. You are making that content yours. Now, like, yes, you got that inspiration from somebody else, but once again, you're modeling their success. You're modeling what they did right. And then you're incorporating your own story and creating your own product. Mm-hmm. And that's where, as we've said, you take that time and you become that expert, you build that level of self-confidence, and then you share your story on what you've learned from doing that. That's where that opportunity is. And that's how you kind of have to, make that shift where you're not stealing their content.
No. And you can even, I mean, in articles that I've written, you can even say, hey, I was listening to so-and-so's podcast the other day, and he was discussing, the consumer price index, and it was really complex. And I want to break it down for you to make it easier. That way you don't have to spend 45 minutes. I mean, you can even do that. If you're super worried about somebody accusing you of, stealing their ideas or stealing their information, you can certainly cite them and give them credit. That's certainly possible. I don't think if you have a strong enough audience base and they really want what you have, or they're really following you to get the most value, I doubt they're going to go there and just say, oh, I'm done with Aaron, I'm going to go on to the next podcast. I think they're going to stick with you and they're going to appreciate that you're educating yourself, and then you're like we talked about, you're repurposing it and making it easier for them, because once again, we're all fighting for people's attention and time. And if you're busy, you're a student, working, own a business, whatever, have a family, you don't want to listen to 15 podcasts. You don't want to read, like I read a lot of books. A lot of people don't like to read books. So if I paraphrase, whatever book I'm reading right now and tell my audience about it, or I write a blog about it, or make a vlog about it, and it can help them, and it's like maybe a 5 or 10 minute clip, a takeaway, a review. Like we said, work off of somebody else's stuff. Do a reaction video. If you don't agree with somebody, make a reaction video. From what I understand, this is pretty popular on TikTok. I'm not a TikToker, but from what I understand right now, this is a big thing. One TikToker, that is in, let's say, real estate or finance, looks at another TikToker's TikTok and does a reaction video and says, hey, this is why so-and-so is wrong. And people really love that. So even if you don't have your own content, go on YouTube, find something that your dream clients are looking at and make a reaction video and say, hey, I disagree with Aaron because of this, this, and this. And let me tell you why I'm the expert. That right there could build immediate credibility with an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that we've really highlighted without like outright saying it is that, I mean, if you're listening to this right now, you've probably already realized what a big part of our lives technology has become. And obviously, like in the discussions that we've had so far, we're talking a lot about like the podcast medium and content creation and things like that, where, you know, that's YouTube, that's Instagram, that's TikTok, like that's all these different things that are extremely prevalent. And that's because, like, as you said, we're all fighting for attention. Where is everyone spending their time? Where are they all, you know, keeping their attention? On Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. Like that's where the people are. That's why so many people are flooding those gates, I guess you could say, and then putting their content out on those platforms. But another thing that I really like that you mentioned there is that technology really poses an extreme opportunity for us now. And I know we've talked about a few different times our dream customers, and we've also talked about leveraging someone else's success or opportunities. So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on there. And one is that, like, we mentioned a lot about like reading books today. And a lot of people now, I know people are heavily shifting into audiobooks. And a lot of people, I mean, I will admit it's a lot easier to do on the go. You can listen to an audiobook in the car, you can listen to an audiobook while you're doing the dishes, you know, before you're going to bed. Like it's a lot easier to multitask. But some other people like still are a little bit more like nostalgic, I guess you could say, and they like that handheld, you know, going through a book with a pen, highlighting things, you know, whatever that looks like. But I'll even admit, like me, like I don't want to sit and read a book all the time. So
Sure.
that's where like that opportunity is, that like if you are a reader or you know, like do take in a lot more of that content, for you to go and repurpose that content that you're learning and then condense it, shrink it down, make it easier to understand for someone else out there. And then they can learn basically what you learned in your 10 to 15-minute YouTube video per se, that you then make that reaction out of. But another thing that I wanted to touch on there was a couple of times we've mentioned our dream clients on here today. And I know that was one of the concepts that I kind of struggled to wrap my head around at first, because like when I first kind of got into like the business, I guess you could say, mindset, like I didn't really understand what your dream customer was supposed to be. Like I understand like that was your ideal person, that's the person that you're creating your content for, but I didn't really know how to like zero in on that, how to create that itself. And I don't remember exactly who, but it was a little while back, it might have been Russell Brunson or someone as well. But I was listening to someone more or less give a speech or something on like what your dream customer is, and in that moment they had said that often your dream customer is you, like a year ago or 5 years ago
Yep.
or whatever that is. So for any of you that are out there listening right now that don't quite understand that point, think of where exactly you were when you realized you wanted to get into that thing. What questions were you asking yourself? What did you want to learn? What was going through your head? That's what your now dream customers are searching for. You need to create that content based on those things. Think about what you wanted to know. Think about what you still want to know. Like that's one of the things that I'm going through. I still think about like information that I want to learn, but that no one is necessarily out there teaching. Well, I have to go find those things. But in that, I realized that yes, I have to put in the time, but that's also an opportunity for me to create content that no one else is creating. And I can teach that to the people that are in my shoes right now.
Yeah.
Those are my dream clients.
And I think the thing is, I think that the another big point here is this is, we're on the leading edge of this. We're not even into the middle of this content era. I mean, this is still a very fresh idea. And I think to all your viewers that are new, they might maybe still in college, and I didn't understand how much knowledge I had accumulated. And I am not perfect with content. I'm actually bringing on a VA to help me get the content out of my head. But I have so much in my head that so many other people don't know about. And whether that's like even the hobbies that I do, there's so much I have in my head. And you may think like, man, I'm late to the game. Nobody's going to want to listen to me. You know, I just graduated college, blah, blah, blah. But you'd be surprised, because I'm just getting into it, but I'm talking to investors. I'm 25. I talk to investors that are 50 years old, and they're like, holy crap, wow, like this guy knows some stuff. Like this is a real deal. I've had 65-year-olds go, man, you know more than the guy that, you know, sells me my mutual funds. And I'm not saying that to brag, but it's just like now you can get paid, or you can find a way to get paid for the stuff that you enjoy to listen to. So like if you listen to those podcasts in your free time and you can repurpose that, that's like so powerful. And you can repurpose that over and over and even get into different businesses doing this. You know what I mean? You could have a side hustle while you're still in college. Maybe you like to skateboard. Maybe you know a ton about skateboarding. Maybe you know the best kind of skateboard, the best brand, the best manufacturer. You've spent years riding them. You know what the best trucks are, the best bearings. And there's other kids that are in college that like skateboards. I mean, there you go. There's an audience right there. Figure out what the medium is. Maybe it's Twitter. Maybe all the skateboarders like Twitter. Maybe they like Instagram. Maybe they like Facebook. So you get in a Facebook group and you answer all their questions about bearings on their skateboards. And all of a sudden, look, they know you're the expert. And now you're putting out videos and they want to know, man, John's a really good skateboarder and he knows all the best tricks. I mean, literally you can copy and paste this with so many different things. I've seen it with so many people. They copy and paste this same method over and over and over again. So I think that's really powerful, and your listeners need to hear that. And just not till recently did I realize, like you said, what my dream client was. It was very similar to me and also my father, who is now my business partner. He, to give you a rundown of what our dream client was, is it was a hardworking professional, doesn't have a lot of time, wants to get better and make more money, but like I said, they might listen to a podcast on their lunch break. They might have 10 minutes to read an article when they get home from work, but after that, they don't want to obsess about the same things we obsess about. So make it convenient for them. And then, like you said, talking tech, figure out what the tech is. I just recently had to do this myself. There's some social media, your dream customers aren't going to go there. If you don't go to it, they probably don't go there. So I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter or Facebook. Really don't spend much time on social at all, but I did a lot of research and I realized neither does my dream client. Where does my dream client hang out? Mine hangs out on LinkedIn. So make sure you're spending your energy. Like I thought if I just blasted and I hit every single social media with all the content that I know, that it would be successful. And like I said, I'm not some famous content producer yet, but I can definitely tell you, if you find the places where your dream clients are, you'll get better results. I get more connections on LinkedIn. I get more messages back. I get more meetings with people on that platform. So clearly that's working better than the other one. So make sure you keep a log of your data, but definitely leverage technology, especially if you understand it, because your competitors, I can assure you, they're not doing it. I mean, they are, but they aren't, if that makes sense. They're maybe on there talking, about, they may be talking about the same things as you, but they may not have the story. You talk about the story is really powerful, I've found too, because a lot of people say, hey, come invest your money with me, I'm the best, blah, 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 blah. But when you say, hey, my dad was a doctor, he got wiped out in 2008, he got totally smoked in the stock market, he just doesn't like the stock market, he doesn't understand all the other crazy stuff that Wall Street talks about, he wants something that he can understand and provide predictable returns. And they're like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that's the person I want to invest with. You know what I mean? So don't forget that either. Don't forget your story.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of really important things there. The first that I noticed definitely being that, like, sometimes you're like, while you can have your dream customers, those aren't the only people that are ever going to be interested in something that you're doing. Where, like, yeah, my dream customer may be college students, it may be people just out of college. That doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't business professionals out there that are going to like what I'm doing. Like you mentioned, like, some of like older demographics and things approaching you, like liking like what you're doing, liking what you know. Like there's going to be people out there that appreciate the work that you're putting in, like despite that not necessarily being the person that you created the content for. And I think that that's a really big thing where in my kind of, I guess you could say, time so far, like I've realized that there's a lot of like older professionals out there that it's extremely refreshing to them to know that there are still young people out there getting after it.
Yeah,
Because there's a lot of young people out there that aren't doing much of anything. And they see that, we all see it, but at the same time, like that's why it's so refreshing to someone that's in a bigger position like that to look down and say, you know what, like there's hope, I guess you could say.
sure.
That I think is extremely important as well, as far as someone like trying to recognize their dream client right now, just because like the more, like you said, an extreme amount of number in this country. There's an extreme amount of number of people in the world, obviously much larger at that point. But my point is that like the more you can niche down, the more you can kind of create that little sense of community where, like you said, like you have your skateboarders. Well, where do they like to hang out? Like continue to get more specific. Like you never know, like that's how you get closer to those people. Now, like we just mentioned, like those aren't the only people that are going to watch or enjoy your content, but those are specifically the people that they're going to feel more close to you. They're going to feel that like more bond to you specifically, and those are going to be the people that consume the most of your content. That's where, like, for example, like you mentioned, like the skateboards, like going all the way down to like the specific wheels, to the specific things. Like find the people that use the exact same kind as you. Find the people that, you know, ride, that I guess, you know, ride the same way that you do. Find the people that think the same way that you do. Like that's all of those things. And that's where the other thing that you mentioned was that even all the way down to your habits, like that's all marketable. Like that's all your story. That's all what makes you you. And one of the most important things that I learned from one of my mentors when I first started kind of creating content, it was just that, like, despite there being other people out there doing the same things, they're not you. And you bring your own unique spin to everything. You have your own story, you have your own style. Like, it doesn't really matter what they're doing. This is your doing. And there's
Yeah.
going to be people that like what they're doing, but there's going to be people that might like what you're doing more. Like your perspective, your habits, every little thing about you matters. And you might think that it doesn't, but it does. And that's really what can separate you despite having a similar product in the market.
And people don't realize, but you can almost, and I've seen it. I mean, we mentioned Hunter Thompson earlier. He has basically became his own little celebrity in some of these masterminds that we hang out with. And he was able to do that because he was able to get on the same level as so many other people that have been in his shoes, and they bought the story. People really crave the story. I feel like that's so overlooked by so many entrepreneurs. The story, you start reading like books about pitching. Oren Class, a big one. He's got a book called Pitch Anything. Most of his biggest pitches, millions and millions of dollars, actually relied mostly on emotion and keeping people's attention. I suggest anybody who's interested in pitching anything to an investor or selling anything is to really understand how to tie into people's emotions more than anything. But going back to my original point is people don't realize that if you create your own little microcosm, your own little community, your own little world, I've seen it with other content creators, it's so powerful. Then you go sell a course to them. We go back to the skateboard. All right, so a bunch of your people, they love skateboards, but maybe they're not good at riding skateboards. So maybe you sell them a 5-part course on, you know, here's how you do an ollie, here's how you do a kickflip, here's how you do, those are the only 2 tricks I know on a skateboard, but the rest of the tricks, you know what I mean? Here's how you drop into a half pipe. And they'll pay $97 now for a course because they've been listening to you. You're a celebrity, and you might only need, you know, 1,000 people, but you just made $9,700 off of your knowledge, just, you know, well, in that case, 97,000, excuse my math, but you just made $100,000 off of your audience, and you helped them, and they were happy about it, and they're going to continue to follow you. And I think that's really powerful. Going back to the celebrity status that you can kind of elevate yourself to. I recently read a quote, and I think it was like, there's a lot more fish in the sea than a fish in a barrel, but it's a lot easier to fish in a barrel than it is, or it's a lot easier to catch fish in a barrel than it is to catch fish in the sea. And that just goes to show you, if you make your own community and you really niche down, you know, going back to the skateboard idea, maybe it's people that skateboard in this geographical area, and this is their favorite type of skateboard. And maybe there's different types of skateboarding, street skateboarding versus skateboarding in a park, and you really niche down. From what I've learned, there's still going to be people that come from outside that niche and flock to you, but you're just really going to be able to relate to so many more people as opposed to just saying I'm the skateboard guy, because there's a bunch of people that are a skateboard guy. But if you're the skateboard guy in Pittsburgh that rides at this park, that rides on this skateboard specifically and loves to do these tricks, I think you'll be surprised, because I think you actually might get a following faster than if you just say, hey, I'm the skateboarding guy. So that's just something for your listeners to take into consideration, is niching down too much. Like I'm an outdoorsman, relating to your audience about spending time in the great outdoors, and we like to hunt and fish and spend time on boats and stuff like that. I'm not afraid to admit that, and there's a lot of people that like that, and I think it's more a personal relationship thing too, to get that celebrity status. Like I said, you don't need a million followers like maybe Nike or one of these big people need. You only need a couple hundred, depending on what your business is. You might only need a couple hundred or a couple thousand. So that's something for your audience to really consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just another really powerful point out of all the things we've talked about today. Um, Lots to take in and really a lot to kind of sit on and just kind of think about how and where does that fit into my own life? Where does that fit into my own vision? Like, what do those things really mean to me? And, that's just definitely something I think that they can really kind of take from today and dive into, after completion. I do think it's about time for us to start winding it down here. I don't want to take up too much of your time today,
Sure.
but in closing, I do always like to ask the guests if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself in that personal ground zero moment, what do you think you would tell yourself?
I think that's a great question. I would tell myself to have more self confidence when you're sure that that you've been studying this, and maybe it's just me and my personality, but I got to a point where I was around a lot of people in the same business, and I don't, like I said, this is an ego thing, but you understand when you're the expert, because you understand when you're in the room and you're talking to other people and you understand these concepts, and maybe you're adding some other concepts. Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about that? When I was early on, I was kind of timid. Like, I don't want to seem like the guy that knows it all, but don't be afraid to be an expert, obviously in a polite way. So I would tell myself, I think I would have scaled my business faster, could have had more investors, I could have got into private lending sooner, just by having more self-confidence in the fact that you do know what you're talking about. You are doing great deals. You know what I mean? And I didn't see it until a couple years into it. It obviously isn't too late now. That would be the first one. And then having self-confidence, or I should say, trusting your gut. So early on, I would not do a deal, and I would be like, man, maybe I should have done that deal. Now it's like, nope, I knew I shouldn't have done that deal. It's the right decision, move on. Your gut a lot of times can be right. Now, that being said, your brain, not your gut, it's different, but your brain has a way of talking you out of doing good deals as well. And so, not to confuse your audience too much, but my last point I would make to myself is I also have talked myself out of really great things. And part of that was because I listened to other people that weren't experts. I listened to people that weren't in my field, or weren't, maybe they were in residential real estate, but they didn't understand the type of deals we were doing. Or I listened to a contractor one time who didn't understand what my vision was. And that deal probably lost me $50,000. I'll never make that mistake again. But if I could tell myself that in the beginning, that, hey, don't listen to other people, listen to the experts that are really going to help you understand your business, but also trust your gut. Because like I said, I've backed out of deals and I thought, maybe I should have done them. I look at what maybe my competitor paid for them. They overpaid. Looked at what it sold for. I'm like, man, I was right. I shouldn't have done that deal, and I didn't, and that was a good move. So those are the three characteristics I think that in the beginning would really help. Is, like I said, having self-confidence, trusting your gut, but then also trusting your brain, and being able to make decisions independent of other people. Because just remember, whoever's listening, when you're starting out, there's going to be a lot of noise. It's going to be some of your best friends. It's going to be it might be your mother and father, might be your aunt and uncle, might be your grandmother and grandmother. They may say, you are that's the dumbest thing in the world. I don't know why you're doing that. You need to go get a real job. And you have to be able to separate the truth from the noise.
Absolutely. And honestly, I don't think there's any way that I could have worded that better at all myself. So I'm just going to let that simmer for everybody. Just a slight reiteration is just trust the work that you're putting in. Even if you're just getting started, Trust the work that you're putting in. You know the hours that you're taking. You know the work that you're putting in to understand something. Don't let someone else that doesn't understand your vision, and slight side comment, nobody sees your vision like you do. So don't expect them to. So if it's something that you hold near and dear to yourself and it's extremely important to you, be careful who you share that with. Not that it's a bad thing to share your vision, but they're just, no matter what, they're not going to see it like you do. So be wary of who you share it with. There are people out there that are extremely good intentioned and they want to help you and they want what's best for you, but they don't understand it the same way that you do. And in doing that, they can knock you off of some really great opportunities. They can knock you off of your whole idea altogether. And that's where, just beware of who you share your vision with, and trust the work that you're putting in, trust your gut, as you had said, and just keep grinding.
Yep.
But with that, Dave, I really, really appreciate you coming on today. I mean,
Sure.
some truly, truly great knowledge bombs for everybody today. I know that there's tons and tons for everybody to go through, and I can't wait to go back through this one myself because I know I'm going to get something new from it every time.
Sure.
So once again, just thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And with that, everyone, always remember, this is Dream Chasers Ground Zero, and there's nowhere to go from here. But thanks, Dave.
Thank you.